How does money from New Mexico's oil and gas industry or your property taxes turn into senior centers, university buildings, even movie backlots? New Mexico in Depth is here to explain how, in 2014, state lawmakers paired a $4 billion wish list into a final bill that funded 10% of those projects. Money for capital outlay projects comes from two sources. The severance tax on oil and gas extracted from New Mexico lands is used for capital projects annually. Property taxes are used to fund projects in even-numbered years. Bonds are sold based on revenue from both those tax sources. The repayment period is typically 10 years, though some severance tax bond issues are for shorter terms. Bonds based on property taxes are more complicated. They're known as general obligation bonds or GO bonds. Those bonds fund projects only in even-numbered years because they require voter approval. The amount of money to be allocated is based on revenue forecasts by state economists. That's the funding part of the equation. The project part is way more complicated. Projects are supposed to cost a minimum of $5,000 and have a lifespan of at least 10 years. And they're supposed to be in a 5-year capital plans filed by state agencies, cities, or counties, though the process is optional for cities and counties. It is mandatory for state agencies. The Capital Outlay Bureau of the Department of Finance and Administration reviews projects and also works with legislative staff to set priorities. The governor then makes recommendations for projects to the legislature for funding. This is where the process gets a little, unusual. At some point, the executive branch negotiates with lawmakers on how much of the available capital outlay money will go to items on the governor's list, and how much is left over. That leftover amount is divided equally between the House and Senate, then equally among the members of each body. They get to add the projects they want to capital outlay bills. We haven't heard of any other states that use this sort of pork barrel method to divvy up capital project money. But that's how many of the city and county level projects get funded. Sometimes even projects that local governments didn't request, but maybe lobbyists or other interests did. New Mexico is relatively unusual in that the state funds many small projects for city and county governments. That helps those governments keep property taxes relatively low, but critics say that money takes away from larger statewide priorities. Read more about those criticisms and check out a database of projects funded in 2014 at New Mexico in Depth, nmindepth.com. For New Mexico in Depth, I'm Sandra Fish.